What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Young Guns Bowl preview. I'm here with my partners in crime, Buckeye Mike from Sports Talk Mike, and Jackson Johnson, and I'm here with the star of the voice of the college football's Clemson channel, Mr. Jordan Bowman. Thank you for agreeing to come on, my good sir.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. My dog is running around in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
Mm-hmm. So Clemson back on top of the ACC. So this year, obviously, it wasn't perfect, but it was still a great year to get back on top, beat NC State. It was still a pretty good year. What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the weirdest thing about this season for Clemson fans in general is you come into the year, you're coming off of a 10-3 season, with Cheez It Bowl win, a really disappointing season by Clemson standards. You struggled on offense. DJ Uyunglele did not play well. The offense in general did not play well, and you felt like you missed a golden opportunity, especially with how good that defense was, second in scoring defense that only allowed 13 points a game all year. Um, so, coming into this season, there was a lot of expectations for there to be a massive improvement. You get a lot of guys coming back offensively. You had to deal with some coaching turnover, but you still felt really good about the makeup of the roster, and you thought there would at least be some improvement in that. If you could at least be confident offensively, you would be right back in the playoff conversation. And in some ways, I think that did happen. Clemson's offense, as maligned as it was this year, it was a lot better than it was last year. And I believe, averaged about 35 points a game. So not, they're not lighting up the scoreboard or anything like that, but it was, miles above the 26 points per game that they were averaging last year. But I think the biggest thing was that in the biggest spots and in the most important moments of the season, you really felt like the offense really let you down. Obviously, you start 7-0 and or 8-0, whatever it was, and then the Notre Dame game happened, and that was you had seen some cracks in the armor the week before in the Syracuse game, but the Notre Dame game was just a total system failure on all fronts, and it really kind of derailed a lot of the expectations and a lot of the optimism that Clemson fans had. So, and that coupled with the South Carolina loss, which is one of the worst losses in Dabo Swinney's tenure, just as far as the circumstances and how it played out. So it was a successful season. You get back to the ACC championship game, and they make the quarterback switch, and the offense all of a sudden comes alive. And so it's a really really weird season to look at for Clemson fans, because it's like you had that success. DJ played well in spots, but he wasn't good enough to get you over the hump when you really needed it. And then the quarterback, and it cost you a couple of games, and when you were in the playoff conversation. And so there's a lot of optimism for Clemson fans now that the future is kind of here. But it's I would say it's a successful season by most objective standards, but still left a lot to be desired. This game coming up can tell us a lot about what the prospects are for this team next season. So.
Mm-hmm. So, did Cade Klubnik coming in? If you guys win and would look really good on offense, like how optimistic are Clemson fans going to be next year? I know like this year there was some positives too, but like going into next year, if like Cade just goes off with 300 yards, like how optimistic will the fans be going into next year?
Oh, it's already happening because of the ACC championship game. But you're gonna get the preseason Heisman talk and all of that. I've already seen Cade Klubnik on some early odds. I'm like, all right, let's slow our roll a little bit. But if Cade comes out and has a phenomenal game, I do think that's going to really invigorate the fan base, because especially with what you have coming back next season on offense. I mean, you're losing your starting tight end and Davis Allen, and your left tackle Jordan McFadden. Other than that, pretty much everybody else, and Kobe Pace, third string running back, entered the transfer portal. But other than that, everybody else is expected to come back. So 4 or 5 starters on the offensive line. Pretty much all of your wide receivers are coming back. barring more transfers. And you still have you have really good group at tight end. You have some really good running backs. Will Shipley and Phil Moffa coming back. So there's a lot to be excited about as far as the offense is concerned. And I think that's going to whether it's whether they need to Clemson fans need to kind of rein themselves in a little bit and kind of temper expectations. I think there's something to that. We all thought that DJ Uyunglele was going to be the next in that line of Deshaun Watson to Trevor Lawrence, and it didn't work out. He had his moments, but it was not nearly close to the same kind of production, and he didn't really live up to that 5-star billing. So you have to kind of slow down, but it's inevitable. If Cade comes out and has a really strong game and Clemson wins, especially if Clemson wins convincingly, there's going to be a lot of hype, rolling into next season.
So with Brandon Streeter and Wes Goodwin, obviously Clemson fans had some complaints about them. Like, what's your overall assessment of their first year in charge at the Rock?
Yeah, they're a really hard couple of quarters to grade. Both are, essentially first-time coordinators. Brandon Streeter called plays before at Richmond and some other places, but not at the Power 5 level, not at a program like Clemson. And Wes Goodwin, this is his first coordinator experience at all. And I think there was ups and downs for both of them. If I had to give them both a letter grade, I would say I think for Brandon Streeter, I would give him a C plus. Give him a C plus. It was a passing grade. The offense did improve. You did see some improvements from DJ, especially early in the year. But the offense still let you down in some spots where you couldn't afford to have them let you down, and it just wasn't good. Westwood, I would say I'd give him a B minus or a B. I thought early in the year he kind of struggled, making adjustments, especially at the beginning of early in the game. And to his credit, I thought he really improved over the course of the year, and that's why I give him a higher grade. But he also had more talent to work with. But I think that the defense wasn't the reason you lost either of those two games necessarily. They certainly didn't play well in those spots, but if you had competent production from your offense, you probably are at least competitive in both of those, or at least competitive in the Notre Dame game, and maybe you probably win the South Carolina game. So I think there's a lot of growth that can be had, but I think the jury is still out on both of them, whether these are the right guys moving forward for Dabo Swinney's program. But yeah, I still have I still have some hope for those two, and I think Wes Goodwin, I think he has it up here. I think he's just he's learned under the best. And he really has from everything that's been said about him, he has a tremendous defensive mind. I think it's just, being comfortable as a coach, holding his guys accountable. I think that's the biggest thing that he has to improve on. And, but yeah, that's kind of how I feel on him.
So with Jalen Hyatt opting out of the Orange Bowl, and Cedric Tillman opting out, and Hendon Hooker being out because of the obvious ACL injury, how much easier does it get for Clemson in the Orange Bowl?
Well, obviously it doesn't hurt. That's for sure. Yeah, those opt-outs and injuries definitely are in Clemson's favor. And the funniest thing is I looked at this, and I also saw someone say this on Twitter. Even with Hyatt and Tillman out, Tennessee has two of the top three receivers in terms of production in this game. So that kind of tells you how great their offense was in the passing game, and also how relatively pedestrian Clemson's passing offense was. But yeah, it definitely helps, and you definitely don't have to worry about Hendon Hooker, especially how accurate he is and just how instinctive he is, and he really doesn't throw a bad ball, and that's hard to stop when you're a defense. There's no good defense for a perfect throw. and Hendon Hooker has had a lot of perfect throws this season. So with Joe Milton under center, I think it's definitely less pressure. It takes a lot of pressure off the back end. So it definitely helps. And obviously Hyatt and Tillman are fantastic receivers. And that'll also take some pressure off the secondary. So it definitely helps. I'll be interested to see how Clemson decides to play this defensively.
Well, Cade Klubnik, starting makes things a little bit easier in a way for Clemson. But when DJ decided to transfer from Clemson to Oregon State, what was the reaction from the Clemson fan base?
A lot of mixed reaction. And I think it's kind of indicative of how DJ is going to be remembered at Clemson. There's going to be a lot of mixed feelings. I think DJ handled his situation as maturely and with as much grace and class as I've ever seen a quarterback that's gotten benched, especially a quarterback of his caliber. Former 5-star, number one in his state, number one pro style quarterback in his class. The fan base, it's a lot of mixed reactions. Some, were happy to see him go because for, obvious reasons, the offensive struggles, they placed a lot of blame on him for that. Some, others were not necessarily happy to see him go, but they were understanding, and they were like, it was kind of a mutual, kind of parting of ways, and it was best for both sides. But all in all, I have a tremendous amount of respect for DJ Uyunglele, and I think a lot of the fan base does. He handled, like I said, he handled his situation as good as I've ever seen it, and he's been through a lot these last 2 years. And all in all, I mean, for most programs, he was 21-6 as a starter. So at most programs, he would be revered and they'd put, retire his jersey or something. That's a great record for a starting quarterback. But
he reminds me of JT Barrett at Ohio State a bit.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, I would say, yeah, I think that's not in terms of they were obviously not the same player, but in terms of how they're going to be remembered. They had success. They had success. They were by no means bad quarterbacks, but they were just they weren't good enough at times, and that's just kind of muddied their reception with the fan base and all of that. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and I'm obviously rooting for him at Oregon State. I think that'll be a really interesting combo, him and Jonathan Smith. Jonathan Smith obviously is well respected in the industry as far as coaching quarterbacks. He was a great college quarterback himself at Oregon State. So I'm really interested to see what kind of offense they run and what kind of improvements DJ can make in his senior year.
So since we're talking about DJ, do you think it's more of he just wasn't the right fit, and it wasn't really as the outsiders like me and a bunch of others who say DJ just straight up stinks? Because I came to the conclusion last night he doesn't actually stink. I put respect on his name and say he just wasn't the right fit at Clemson. So do you think it's more he just wasn't the right fit? And what made Dabo wait so long to be like, okay, you're not producing good enough, we're going with Cade?
Great questions. The first one is really interesting because it's really hard to kind of gauge how much the offensive struggles were because of DJ. I definitely don't think that DJ stinks. So I'm with you there. I don't, and I do think there were some fit issues, and so it's kind of a combination of both. I think, especially in 2021, there were a lot of deficient aspects of the Clemson offense that did not do DJ any favors at all. He was also not in the best shape of his life either. He was, at one point he was playing at nearly 270. He's basically a defensive end or a smaller defensive tackle out there playing quarterback. And so he did a ton of work in the offseason to kind of slim down and all of that. And I think he did some things to fix his mechanics and all that. And because of that, I think the offense did improve. But I also think that the team around him was not necessarily up to par. They had a ton of injuries in the wide receiver room in 2021. The offensive line was not good for a lot of 2021. They made some massive improvements this year, but I think all in all, they made a lot of they. I think both DJ and the offense around him made a lot of improvements, and I think that's kind of how you saw some of the improvements this season. But there were just some times where DJ was, he would have lapses. The Syracuse game, just kind of, let his mechanics, his footwork kind of get away from him, and he made some poor throws. And I mean, you can't attribute that, the offense. It's just he did not make those plays. The Notre Dame game wasn't good. And at the beginning of the South Carolina game, when he threw it was 9 for 29, and that was probably the worst game of his career. He just flat out missed a lot of throws, and so I think there's times where he got in his own head. I think he had some confidence issues that he did a lot to shake, but they never completely went away. And I think that affected his play as well. So there were so many just compacting factors on why the offense didn't really mesh completely with DJ. But it's definitely not a talent issue, or I do think there's some fit issue. I feel like the coaches at certain points let him down. I think his teammates sometimes let him down, but other times he just flat out was not doing the things he had to do. So it's. I think it was just as a unit. I think the offense just needed kind of that change, and I think he needs that change and a fresh start as well. So that was a long answer to your first question. To your second question, why did Dabo, kind of wait so long? I really think, and I'm not in Dabo Sweeney's head. I don't know the guy personally, but I really think he had just a really strong love for DJ, and he felt like he really believed that he could make it work, and that he just needed that support, and which is I respect that a ton. Obviously I think Dabo truly loved DJ, and he wanted the offense to really work around him, and at a certain point. It cost you 2 games, and I think it kind of the South Carolina game was just kind of the moment where it was like it's probably not gonna work, and it's sad, and I know Clemson fans are frustrated about it, but I don't think anybody's more frustrated than Dabo and DJ, because I think they both really wanted it to work, but just didn't, and. I think Dabo just really had a love for DJ and thought that this was really put his faith in him, and it didn't work out. Sometimes that's just what it is.
So when watching the Orange Bowl, what are the strengths and weaknesses that Clemson has that everyone needs to watch tomorrow night on ESPN?
Good question. Offensively, I'll start offensively. I think the biggest weakness of this offense is, at least, and it's kind of hard to answer this because we haven't seen enough of a sample size with this offense under Cade Klubnik to really know. But throughout the entirety of the season, I think the biggest weakness in this offense has, especially in the latter half of the year, they really like to give the ball up. They fumble it, throwing interceptions. The turnovers were a huge problem the second half of the season. And I think that Tennessee, they have not been a great defense this year, but they've been opportunistic, and they forced turnovers at times this year. So I think that's one thing to watch, is ball security. And just the downfield passing game in general is not where it has been in previous years. Clemson used to be known for having elite wide receiver talent, and just kind of throwing it up there. They had guys that could just go up and get it, and they could make big plays down the field. That has not really been a part of the offense the last 2 seasons. I think you saw a little bit of it in the ACC championship game, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be a consistent part of the offense, just because I'm not necessarily sure that the wide receiver talent is to that level. So I think those are kind of the 2 things. I think if I were Tennessee, I would test Clemson's ability to take shots down the field, and I would be really aggressive and see how the offensive line, how Cade handles it. On the defensive side of the ball, obviously a lot has been talked about the defensive line and the linebackers. I think those are obviously 2 of the better units in the country. But the secondary has been an improved, but still a still shaky unit for Clemson. And they're going to have some depth issues, I think, tomorrow. With I don't believe Sheridan Jones is playing. Malcolm Green, well, Sheridan Jones is questionable. I think he has a hip flexor or something like that. So he's going to be kind of a game time decision. And if he's not playing, it's a huge loss. And he's arguably their top corner, definitely a starter. And that would be a huge blow. Malcolm Green is out for the year. And I think there's some vulnerability in that Clemson secondary that I think you can exploit. So if I were Tennessee, I know Joe Milton is not the most accurate quarterback, but I think at least forcing Clemson to respect the deep passing game is going to be key. And I think you got to take your shots even with your best wide receivers not playing and your starting quarterback not playing. I think you got to test them deep.
Do you think Cole Turner can be that guy? Because he was making plays against UNC. Do you think he can be that guy in the bowl game and next season?
He looked really good. And I thought that it was really interesting how Clemson kind of kept him on the back burner. They wanted to preserve his red shirt. And I had heard a lot in the offseason about how Cole Turner was one of the fastest guys on the team and how good he was. And I was like, oh, well, no, I've heard, a lot about that, but he looked really good. I don't think Cole Turner should ever be your number 1 option at wide receiver by any means. But I thought he looked really phenomenal in that ACC championship game. And he definitely has a lot of potential in this offense with his speed, his shiftiness, and he made some really nice catches, down the field. So that's something that Clemson has kind of missed the last couple of seasons. So I got a lot of hope for and optimism for Cole Turner. I expect him to be a contributor in the offense tomorrow. So it'll be interesting.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, where would you rate the 2022 season for Clemson?
As far as what, all time in Clemson history, or just like Dabo Swinney's tenure, or what?
Just this year, like where would you rate?
Based on the expectations.
Okay, based on the expectations, this was, all in all, I think this was a disappointing year because of, I think anytime you lose to your in-state rival, a team you've, beaten 7 straight times, and, you've kind of, had the upper hand in, and, the way to lose that game the way you did. And then obviously being uncompetitive in South Bend, and there were just spots in other games that you won where you just weren't, you did not look like the Clemson of old. I think I would give this season a C. It's passing. You won the ACC. You're playing in a New Year's Six bowl, but just there were some lapses from the coaching staff and just some disappointing aspects of the team that kind of kept you from playing up to your talent level at times. So it's I guess I give it a C as far as based on expectations and all of that, and how you lost the games you did.
Yeah, and the 7-game winning streak against South Carolina snapping. That's just like, wow.
Yep. 7-game winning streak, 40-game home winning streak. The longest of this. Well, I think the longest of this century. It just all those things, were snapped in that game, and a game that you should have won. And you went away from the things that were working. Will Shipley had yards rushing in the first half, and I think he only got 4 carries the rest of the game. DJ.
I didn't get that at all, man.
Yeah, DJ going 9 for 29. That it, and to lose the way you did, it's frustrating. That's one of the worst. That's one of the worst losses, like I said, of Dabo's tenure, and that's anytime you have a loss that bad, I think you got to bring it
You
down.
think that's worse than the worst since 2013 Florida State?
That's kind of tough. That's kind of tough because they were very, very different games. I don't know. 2013 Florida State. I think just because I don't know, it might be worse than 2013 Florida State, and it might be recency bias. I think I need a little bit more time to think about it and let it marinate a little bit before I kind of firmly place it, give it a slot in the worst losses in Dabo's tenure. But I don't know. 2013 Florida State was just you were flat out uncompetitive from the jump. It almost in some ways it hurt less, and you were favored. It was an opportunity for you because Clemson was number 3, Florida State was number 5. It was at home. A lot of expectations, high profile matchup. I don't know. In some ways, it was like, well, you got flat out beat that day. It wasn't. It wasn't like it was a game that you should have won, and the way the game played out, it was like you missed an opportunity here or there that cost you the game. You were just flat out beat. And that 2013 Florida State team was historic in retrospect. But I don't know, losing the South Carolina game the way you did, and just just flat out, that was a almost coaching malpractice.
It was the worst coaching I think I've ever seen in college football.
Yeah, just from the special teams errors, from the offensive play calling decisions, it was poor. It was poor. I mean, I know that the defense gave up 31 points, but the offense did some terrible things and put them in some bad spots. That was a game you should have won. You outgained them. You ran anytime you ran the ball, you got what you got what you wanted, and instead you put the ball in your struggling quarterback's hands. And I don't want to spend.
I'm not trying to put you in a bad mood.
I understand. I know, but it's something that has to be talked about. And that was an awful game. I'd rather Notre Dame game again. To be honest, just over that one. That was rough. That was rough.
So looking at both of these teams, obviously there are some opt-outs for Clemson as well, as Miles Murphy, of course, opted out, and then what's his face got hurt. I'm sorry.
Trenton Simpson.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So do you think that Joe? I mean, obviously, I don't know. I have no faith in Joe Milton, but do you think if Joe isn't as bad as he was with Michigan, do you think that there's a chance that Tennessee can stay in it if they're able to? Because they still have good receivers. So
yeah, they do. No, I think absolutely, and I know if Milton is on and he's putting the ball where he needs to, they have every opportunity and chance. They still have talented receivers. Obviously, I think they're going to rely heavily on Brew McCoy tomorrow, and I think he has that capability. He has that talent level. He was a former 5-star. So, that he's a guy that, Clemson has to be prepared for. And if the offense isn't, being productive, they have every chance in this game to stay close. And, and I think that's kind of the biggest thing. I think I'm really interested to see how Clemson plays this on both sides of the ball. But offensively, it's going to be interesting because as much of a sieve as Tennessee's defense has been this year, they've been really good at stopping the run, and that's kind of what Clemson has done well offensively this year. But running the ball, but with Will Shipley and Phil Moffitt, and setting the offense up that way. I think that's how Clemson, when they've looked good offensively, that's when they've been at their best. And I think Tennessee's going to do a lot to sell out, try to stop the run. That's what they've done all season. That's kind of been their philosophy. It's like, well, we'd rather have make you beat us one dimensionally instead of we play too high and you still hit big plays on us and you can run the ball. I think, and that's kind of what North Carolina did in the ACC championship game as well. So I think, there's going to be some pressure on Cade. He's going to have to be accurate. He's going to have to make throws. I think there will be opportunities for big plays, and there will be opportunities to move the ball. And I think Cade has to be on point. And on the defensive side of the ball, can't give up big plays. But you also, I think you cannot afford to let Tennessee run the ball. You go back and watch that game against Vanderbilt. Joe Milton, I think, was 11 for 21. I don't even think he threw for 200 passing yards in that game. They ran the ball for almost like 300 yards in that game. And I think Tennessee is really, really good. It's kind of been an underrated aspect of their offense is their run game. And they have some their offensive line does a really good job, and they have some really nice backs. So stopping the run first and foremost, that's something that Clemson has done for the most part really, really well. But when teams have been able to impose their will on them in the run game, Florida State comes to mind. Notre Dame did it. That's kind of you're going to put yourself in some really bad spots. So I think that for Clemson, it's going to be the key is going to be stopping the run. If Joe Milton beats you and he's hitting those plays, you kind of have to live with it. But stopping the run first and foremost is I would go.
Yeah. I think just the Brian Brees story, obviously with everything that happened, like I want him, like as a neutral fan, like I just want him to have a big game. Like I want him, because do you think did he declare for the draft?
He said he has not decided it. He hasn't even talked to Dabo about it, so Dabo doesn't even know. And he said he's not going to make a decision, and he hasn't really thought about it until after the bowl game. But yeah, to your point, yeah, I'm rooting for that kid so hard. I think it's going to be really interesting because with Myles Murphy opting out, I think you're going to see Myles Murphy play defensive end. He's played defensive tackle most of his career at Clemson, but he has that ability to play defensive end. I think you're going to see him there. I think you're going to see KJ Henry and Brian Brzee at defensive end, and Tyler Davis and Ruka in the middle. So when he did kind of split out and move out to defensive end in the ACC championship game, and I thought he looked really, really good. He was according to PFF, he was the highest graded player in championship weekend. I think he had like a 90-something grade. He was dominant. And if you go back and watch his snaps at defensive end, he was working, North Carolina's right tackle. And I think he has that power and that pass rush ability. It's really special for a guy his size. So, with everything he's been through, I would really, really love him to have a nice game, especially if he decides not to come back. I know he's kind of on the fence about it. He's a top 15, top 20 pick regardless. So if he decided to declare, even if, despite the injuries and all that, I would completely understand. But I really love him for him to have a really nice game tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think the final score is going to be? Give us a preview of like how you think the game's going to go, and like what do you think the score will be at the end in the Hard Rock?
What's the point total for this game? I don't remember.
I can bring it up.
Because I don't necessarily think this is going to be a super high scoring game. I'm going to go. I think Clemson wins the game. I think they should be able to take advantage of
It's
Tennessee.
63.5, and you're a 6-point favorite.
Yeah, I think that's too much. As far as the total is concerned, I'm going to go Clemson 33, Tennessee 24, and I don't necessarily think it's going to be a super high scoring game. I'm not, I'm not sure that Cade Klubnik is, going to fix all of Clemson's offensive issues. I know he looked really good in the ACC championship game, but I think he's going to do enough. He's going to make the layups. That's something that Clemson has not been able to do consistently the last couple of seasons is make the layups and do the little things consistently. And I think Cade is accurate enough and poised enough to make those plays. So I don't necessarily is going to, just light up the scoreboard and hit a bunch of deep shots, but I think they're going to do enough to move the chains, move the ball consistently, and I think is going to make and give Joe Milton enough issues that Clemson is able to win a competitive, but fairly decisive game. So yeah, 33-24. That's kind of where I'm feeling on this game. I think Clemson does cover. But I think it's going to be a competitive game and kind of springboard this team into next season.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Jordan. Here's where we can find you. Jordan, I would say one of the better college football tweeters out there. So definitely worth a follow.
Flattering.
Jackson, do you want to say anything about your Titans to Jordan? You guys are both diehard Titan fans. Do you guys think you can take down the Jags?
I don't even want to watch the Amazon Prime game tonight. I'm just like, don't even
me and Jackson are probably in the same boat. We're just kind of demoralized and just kind of whatever about this season. It's kind of gone off the rails. You lose your quarterback. Everyone's injured. You've lost 5 straight. You just lost to the worst team in the NFL. You're starting Josh Dobbs. Speaking of Tennessee, it's not looking great. But hey, from a Clemson fan perspective, it's cool. Trevor Lawrence is balling. He's going to have a chance to make the playoff in his second season, so that'll be interesting.
Maybe the Titans should trade for the number 1 draft pick with the Texans for Bryce Young.
Oh God, I hope so. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to. But
that's why
definitely. I don't see the future at quarterback right now. Malik Willis is a long ways away from being a capable starting NFL quarterback. So
I know that he's raw, but my man looks terrible. Malik Willis,
he's not there.
He gets a 2023 opportunity, and if he fails 2023, time to go get Drake May or Caleb Williams. So.
Yeah. Oh man, if Tennessee got Drake May or Caleb Williams, I would do 3 backflips on camera. Oh my God, I don't even want to.
Or here's another good one, Michael Penix.
Ooh, Michael Penix, yeah.
Yeah,
but I don't know. May and Williams, I think they're going to separate themselves from the rest of the class next year. I think they're just, I think they're special. So if Tennessee were able to get either one of those, man, that would be great.
They need to get Chase Brown in the draft because Derrick Henry's not going to be there forever. So
I don't want to. I don't even want to think about when Derrick, it comes time for to move on from Derrick Henry.
I know it sucks having to think about it, but it's like we gotta be prepared for it, and we gotta make sure a general manager doesn't have a Julius Rock and Mr. Krabs running that part of the team because they basically didn't want to pay up for AJ Brown, which that was a dumb move. That's why you're losing the AFC South, and the Eagles are the number 1 team in the NFL right now. So
yeah,
that's Tennessee.
Are you suggesting that North Carolina and USC is going to make the playoffs next year?
I don't know about all that. USC maybe, but North Carolina they have some coaching changes that
Gene
they need to
Chizik.
make. Yeah, that's
Phil
and
Longo,
it,
Phil Longo,
yeah. Phil
for that
Longo's going to Wisconsin.
money.
Yeah, and Chip Lindsey, who they replaced him with, I'm really he's kind of had a sketchy resume. I'm interested. It could work. I don't know, but I think the first and foremost, as long as they have Drake May, I think that offense is going to be really good. But defensively, and I don't think it's all Gene Chizik. I think some of their position coaches are bad. I don't know why Tim Cross, their defensive line coach, even still has a job with all the talent that they have on that defensive line, and they are horrible. They don't get sacks. They don't stop the run particularly well.
Yeah, he's almost as bad as NC State's old OC, man. He was about Tim Beck. He's like the Tim Beck.
Yeah. Dre Bly has not. His secondary, his corners have been really inconsistent. Yeah, they need some changes on that defensive coaching staff for sure. So,
yeah, I don't want to get DeAndre and crew angry at me. So
it's all right. But again, thank you guys for having me. This is fun. Definitely plan to be back on here at some point. So
awesome. Thanks, Murray.
Thank
Can you give me Zach's info? I want to do a Purdue LSU preview with him if possible.
Yeah.
Ellis who?
Yeah, I can. I'll send you his. You can DM him on Twitter. I'll send you his.
Awesome.
His profile.
All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks
bro.
guys.